Hi everyone, welcome again to another Healthy and Uplifted webinar. This is our fourth webinar of the year. Please check out our YouTube channel or other previous webinars. I'm so excited to be here. I'm so excited that we're going to be talking about an important topic, getting unstuck, shifting your mindset to overcome. This is a really, really, really important topic for me because as you guys have heard me say, 2021 was one of the hardest time of my life. I was stuck, but I had to learn to unstuck myself. So today I'm excited to have my speakers also share their own story on how they unstuck themselves. With that, I'm going to introduce myself for those of you that don't know me. My name is Dr. Azumah. I'm a board-certified obstetrician, public health professional, community health educator, and a social entrepreneur. I am the founder of Healthy and Uplifted. Also, I started something called Elevating Her Mind and the co-founder and president of Love Your Menses. I am also a doula, a certified life coach, organizational consultant, blogger, professional speaker, and author. So thank you so much for being here. This is me. I like to help. So do most of my panelists that I will be introducing you shortly to. But before we get started, let's review some housekeeping rules. Please, by participating in this event, you give Healthy and Uplifted the permission to use your name, image, or voice for any of our electronic, print, or multimedia publication. If you have any concern, those of you listening, please send us a message and we will work with you. Next. Please note that this is just for informational purposes. This is not a substitute for medical advice. Most of us here are physicians, but we still think like if you have any situation, go to your own primary care physician. Please do not take our word as a medical management plan. Again, this is just for educational purposes. If you want any of us to provide you with medical services, just reach out to us and we should be able to help you. Again, any views, languages, or opinion expressed by the keynote speakers or attendees do not necessarily reflect that of Healthy and Uplifted. Next. All right, so we've gone over the agenda, but I just wanted you guys to see this. Again, we've done the welcome remarks, the housekeeping rules. So we're going to go into reflections, then I'll introduce you to our amazing keynote speakers, and then we're going to have an interactive session, and then we would wrap up and then tell each of you thank you for participating. So let's start with reflections. Have you experienced a setback? You know, I think I just said I did. I'm sure most of us have. Next question. Did the setback help you to become a better person, right? So the goal of a setback, I believe, and I will hear what my speakers have to say, is to make us a better person. So did the setback make you a better person? Are setbacks or the feeling of being stuck a part of life? So when you feel stuck, are you just living? Is it a part of life? So now I'm excited and honored to introduce the special keynote speakers. I am really, really excited. So let's go. So let's start with Dr. Pierson. Stephanie Pierson is a board-certified OBGYN, an advocate for physician disability insurance. Please, you guys take note. It's key, the physician disability insurance. She's a resident of Bryn Mawr, in Pennsylvania. Stephanie actually grew up in southern New Jersey. She received her Bachelor's of Science from Emory University, her medical education from MCP. Now it's part of the Drexel University College of Medicine, and she trained in Pennsylvania Hospital. Unfortunately, or fortunately, she was injured in the prime of her career. She made it her mission to educate and empower her peers about the importance of protecting their most valuable asset, the ability to earn an income, and life's most important people and their families. She believes every physician deserves the protection disability insurance provides. In her role as a CEO, listen, she's a CEO, yeah, Dr. Pierson of Pierson Rivets, an insurance advisory firm. She leads her team to fulfill their mission across all 50 states. She started this insurance disability company, and they are now in 50 states. I'm just excited to have Dr. Pierson here. Next. Krystal Kemp. Oh my goodness. Krystal. I met her when I lived in Kansas City, Missouri. She's a licensed special clinical social worker. She's a certified tobacco treatment specialist. She's a certified grief counselor for the Department of the Veteran Affairs Medical Center in Kansas City, Missouri. Ms. Kemp works in the homeless program, serving homeless veterans with chronic mental illnesses and substance abuse. In addition to this, Krystal also facilitates and teaches the tobacco cessation program to employees at her medical campus. Krystal is also a member of Zeta Phi Beta Sorority Incorporated. In her spare time, she loves playing the piano and the guitar, writing music, listening to jazz, and creating art. Next. Oh my goodness. I call him Kevin, but for you all, he's Dr. Stevens Jr. Okay, why I call him Kevin was I trained him. He was my resident, but now he's a big time. I love it. All right, let me behave myself. So Dr. Kevin Stevens Jr. was born and raised in New Orleans, LA. While Kevin lived in New Orleans, he watched Hurricane Katrina expose the inequities and inefficiencies of our healthcare system. This strategy led to Kevin's passion, which is to change healthcare to provide equitable, efficient, and accessible care for all. After completing an undergraduate degree in molecular biochemistry and biophysics at Yale College, with a combined MD, MBA at the University of Chicago, and a family residency program at Georgetown University, where he served as the chief resident, and he did a great job. He returned to Chicago to join Oak Street Health. Kevin serves as medical director of Oak Street Health's Avalon Park Center in the south side of Chicago. He has also served as the interim program director for the company's Fellowship for Value-Based Care Leadership. During the pandemic, he helped create the COVID task force within his facility. He's just doing great things. He currently serves as Oak Street Health's Senior Medical Director for Louisiana and Mississippi. You guys, help me welcome my phenomenal speakers, my friends. I love you all. I'm going to pass this to Dr. Pierson. Dr. Pierson, take over.
Good afternoon, and thank you so much for having me. This is quite the honor, so I am humbled and honored to be part of this. As Dr. Azumah mentioned, I have had an interesting career trajectory, and being asked to speak about getting unstuck, I didn't realize how personal this was. So without further ado, we'll be talking today a little bit about what it means to be stuck, how it affects us, and what we do with it. Unfortunately, I cannot control the slides. I don't know how you want me to tell you. Oops, go back one. All right, we'll go right. Okay,
Yeah,
so,
sorry.
So basically the three main themes that we're going to talk about. Again, what does it mean to be stuck? How does it affect our lives? And most importantly, how can we get unstuck? Next slide. So let's talk about what it means to actually be stuck. I will tell you that this is an age-old question. Philosophers, psychologists, neuroscientists have been arguing over kind of what comes first, the chicken or the egg, when we talk about thoughts and emotions, right? Most of the time, getting stuck, there is a precipitating event that creates thoughts and emotions that kind of put us in that sense of feeling trapped and not being able to move forward. And so we end up finding that we get somewhat overwhelmed, right? We feel perplexed, we feel confused, we feel like we're unable to actually move forward and get where we need to be. And I will tell you with my own quick 2-minute story, as Dr. Azumah mentioned, I am an OBGYN by training. Unfortunately, I was kicked in the shoulder during a difficult delivery, and I ended up with a torn labrum that developed into a frozen shoulder. Had surgery, was told I'd be back to work in 12 weeks, and that was about 8.5 years ago. I have considerable range of motion deficits and nerve damage in my left arm. I've not been cleared to do OB or operate, and found myself at 40 getting told that my career was over. And I will tell you that saying that I was stuck is actually an understatement. I felt completely lost. I had no idea how much I tied being Dr. Pierson to my actual identity. I thought that I was incapable of doing anything else, right? I was an OBGYN. That's what I did. That's what I spent my entire life to become. And it was really bad. Admittedly, I was suicidal. I actually wrote letters to my husband and my children. I thought that I was better off to them dead. I was worth a lot in life insurance. Found out the hard way that I was not properly insured on the disability front, and found myself kind of down the rabbit hole, which leads us to our next slide, which is how does it actually affect us, right? And it's not just a mental game. It affects us physically, emotionally. It leads to long-term health problems. Physically, we can actually make ourselves sick, right? We end up seeing people with headaches, with anxiety and depression, with crazy fatigue, right? Our nervous system is working on hyperdrive for a really long time. And that's been shown to lead to extensive fatigue. And as medical care folks, we have seen what that does to people, right? So it's not just a mental game, it affects us physically. Emotionally, right? Same thing. We see high increased rates of depression, suicide, addiction, which kind of fold into both, right? We see headaches, GI problems, sexual side effects. It affects how we relate to our partners, our children, our workers, our friends. It ends up becoming much bigger than us. And as far as long-term health problems, there have been plenty of studies that show that just this stress level leads to increased high blood pressure, heart disease, GI issues, sexual health issues. And so we need to really dive into this and figure out, okay, it happens, going back to one of the reflections, is this part of life? I think it is. I think that nobody gets kind of out of our time here without challenges. The beauty becomes, how do we accept that challenge and what do we do to move forward? And I'll be the first to tell you, it's not easy. It probably took me a good 2 or 3 years to really get unstuck. I think that there are short-term problems that have short-term answers, and then we have long-term problems of what am I going to do next, right? Which brings me to my next slide. So let's talk, and this is kind of a 10,000-foot look. I want to make sure that everybody gets a chance to speak. But what are some of the things that we can do to actually get unstuck, right? And it's working a muscle, I think, like any other muscle, right? It takes work. It takes practice. And there are a million times during our week that we probably find ourselves a little stuck. And as I mentioned, some are not as grave as losing your career, right? It could just be, you got locked out of the house and you're mad at your spouse for locking you out of the house inadvertently, right? So we can work on these getting unstuck things really throughout our day, throughout our week. And I think the biggest thing really is give yourself a break. It may sound trite, but accept the fact that you're stuck. It's okay. We all do it. It happens and it's going to happen again, right? So we're not infallible. I talk about in another talk that I give about the tyranny of perfection that exists in healthcare, in medicine. You know, we're supposed to be stronger than, better than, smarter than, more resilient than. We're human, right? And somewhere along our training, it just gets drilled into us that we're not supposed to be, right? I remember getting told, eat when you can, go to the bathroom when you can, right? Like that's not really natural. And so I think just starting with, okay, it's okay. I'm stuck. What am I going to do? Am I going to let this beat me or am I going to beat it? Which leads into taking a pause, right? Just stop. Take a couple deep breaths. Meditate. Do a brain dump. You know, I have found that writing stuff down for me is very therapeutic. I have notebooks everywhere. My children happen to be 13 and 15 now, and they laugh. There's a notebook in my purse. There's a notebook next to my bed. There's a notebook next to my computer. I have it right here, right? So if I get stuck, I can take a step back and just put it all on paper. And then I crumple it up and I throw it away. It's not always that easy. Sometimes I keep writing, right? Sometimes I end up in tears. That's okay. It goes back to we're human. So sometimes a good old messy, nasty cry is a good thing, right? Kind of get the toxins out, which leads into letting it go, right? Give yourself some grace, let it go, throw it out, and try to change your perspective, right? Instead of saying to yourself, this is the worst thing ever, or I can't do this, I don't have this, this was done to me, and now I'm waiting for another external thing to happen to change it. That doesn't often happen, right? Oftentimes, most of the time, we have to create the change that we want. And so changing some of that idea of, okay, instead of making a mountain out of a molehill, let's look at this, right? And for me, it was, what else do I have to offer, right? I have to I have to think that I am more than just Dr. Pierson, the OBGYN. What knowledge did I have that I could share with other people that would be useful? What are my strengths? What are my positive attributes? How can I continue to serve? Because at the end of the day, that's why I went into medicine, right? It was, I wanted to educate, I wanted to fix, I wanted to um, empower women to live the best lives that they could live. And how could I change that idea and make it into something else? My brain still worked, my legs still worked, I wasn't dying. Okay, my life was going to change. Most of my physical activities I couldn't do anymore. I was a martial artist. I did kung fu. Couldn't do that anymore. I rock climbed. Couldn't do that anymore. I scuba dived. Couldn't do that anymore. But let's change my thought process. What could I do? I love cooking. I started taking cooking classes. I love flowers. I started planting a garden, right? I needed to change my own perspective on what do I have to offer. And it seems kind of weird that insurance ended up being it, but I made some mistakes out of sheer ignorance. I thought I did everything the right way. And I found myself thinking, I can't possibly be the only physician who has been through this. I started a private Facebook group It's called Physicians for Physicians. It is specifically for physicians who, because of injury or illness, have had to change their scope of practice or leave medicine. I didn't have a lot of support. Quite honestly, physicians were kind of mean. I got a lot of, what do you mean you can't do your job? How much do you need your shoulder? Oh, kick me. Medicine's going to, you know what? I'd be happy to have a reason to leave. Wasn't very supportive. Even my family, what do you mean you can't do this? How hard is it to deliver a baby? It's really hard. You don't want me delivering your wife, your sister, your daughter, and they have a shoulder dystocia, right? People forget how physical our job really is. I was the prolific surgeon. I couldn't get my arm to get my scopes to do what I wanted them to do. It was not ethical, right? And I started reading everything I could about insurance, and I started going and speaking to area residency programs, right? Starting with a small change. The small change was me. It was me accepting the fact that the life as I knew it had to change. And I could either let it destroy me and destroy my family, or I could pick myself up and figure out a way to still be productive. I wanted my kids to remember and accept that their mom was a strong woman. I came from a divorced household. I saw my mom get not treated well, and I was determined not to have my children see me fail. And so I started with small changes. I changed the way that I spoke to myself. I changed the way that I looked at the world. And I started learning about this stuff. So I locked myself in a room and I studied and I studied. And, I changed that perspective of, I don't know anything about insurance to, I don't know anything about insurance right now, right? I changed, I can never do this to, I'm going to do this, right? We have to work on how we speak to ourselves, which leads right into the believe in yourself, right? We've all gotten where we are in life through hard work, through dedication, through resilience. And we have to keep that belief in ourself, because if you don't believe in yourself, no one else is going to, and there's something to be said to fake it until you make it, right? A lot of it is, how do you present yourself, right? Are you going to show up confident? Are you going to show up energized? Are you going to show up? Just show up. I mean, it really comes down to, you just got to keep moving. And to that point, I will say I didn't do it on my own. And that's my last line of consider speaking with a professional. I don't think that I could have done this myself. I think that there are small stucks. I know that I have small stucks that I get through every day or every week. This one was too big. It was bigger than me. I was fortunate enough to have an incredibly supportive husband and kids, but I took a lot of intensive therapy, pharmacology. If I had not found the psychologist and the psychiatrist that I had, I might be 6 feet under. So I don't want to minimalize the power of surrounding yourself with positive support systems, whether it's a therapist, whether it's a psychiatrist, a psychologist, your best friend, right? You have to support yourself with positivity, because it's the only way that you can get yourself out. And so in the event that you truly feel like, I am really stuck, I cannot change this perspective myself, please, please, please consider speaking with a professional. I have a happy ending. I know that there aren't always happy endings. Again, I go back to, I really had support around me. And when I realized that I had something to offer and started this business and started really just getting out there and talking to anyone who would listen to me about this, it just happened over time. I found my niche. It's true. I wasn't the only physician who didn't understand this topic. And so now I have a new sense of purpose. I have a new passion. Would I kill a puppy to be back in the operating room? Maybe. Not gonna lie. I really miss that. But I can shift my focus and change my perspective and say, okay, look, now I'm helping my colleagues. Whereas before I was helping my patients, I'm empowering physicians, I'm empowering healthcare providers to understand what historically has been a confusing topic. We've been taken advantage of for way too long. And now I focus on that, right? And bringing other people in to make it bigger than myself, and I will often say that we have been fortunate enough to give good people good jobs. We've been fortunate enough to build a company that really is bigger than me. My goal is to create a legacy that I could walk away and what we've built will continue. And that's really my wish for everybody who's here, is that, you can go through these steps and go through this process and realize that there's a silver lining in everything. And you have to believe that or it wins. And I think that everyone here has to have that faith, whether it's in themselves, whether you believe in God, Allah, Buddha, whatever, but you have to believe in yourself first. And I do think that what you put out into the world comes back tenfold. And my wish for everybody is working on getting unstuck and being the best version of you that you can be. And with that, I will hand it back. The next slide is just how to get in touch with me. Or no, it's not. Yeah, that's our website if you want to get in touch with me.
Awesome. Thank you so much. My technical team, can we make sure we have that website in the comment section so that anyone that wants to reach her can reach her by clicking? Thank you again, Dr. Pierson, for being transparent and just sharing with us your experience. I'm so grateful. I'm going to have my two additional panelists to join us. I'll start with Dr. Stevens. Dr. Stevens, you've heard Dr. Pierson's experience of having a shoulder injury that led to disability and changing career. She was transparent that she was suicidal. And thank you so much for being honest and telling us that you use psychotherapy, pharmacology. Thank you so much. It's hard for us physicians to say that we're humans as well, because the white coat sometimes elevates us. So Dr. Stevens, can you unmute yourself and tell us, have you experienced a setback and how did you get unstuck? Thank you.
Yeah, sure. First thing I want to say, thank you, Dr. Pearson, for sharing that story. I think it's so important, as Dr. Azumah was saying, just to have, honestly, all of us being honest with ourselves. I think sometimes, especially us as physicians, we like to think that we are superhuman, we are unvulnerable with all these different things, we can make it through anything, but not that we can't make it through anything, but but it may not be in the way that we initially thought it was going to be. So I think that's super, super important for us all to remember. And just remember as well too, even if you're not stuck now, it doesn't mean you won't get stuck in the future. And it's hard to know what holds in the future. So now for me personally, the times I think back to are actually during medical school. As Pierson's talking about, medical school is a really tough and challenging time. And as I did my training in Chicago, which is a lot different than New Orleans when it comes to weather and and things like that. So in our first year, almost all of us enter medical school thinking, oh, we're going to change what we're going to do this, we're going to do that. And then you realize probably about 3 or 4 days into your first year that no, you have so much to learn and so much to do. And I certainly felt that my first year. I got into medicine because I wanted to help people, and your first year is less about that, and it's more about really building that foundation. And it was a really, really, really tough and long year for me. I know all my friends were back in New Orleans, and I remember it started to be around April, May, June, and it was still really cold in Chicago and still snowing. And that was not the case in New Orleans. And so it was tough for me. When I came to Chicago, I didn't know anyone either as well too. So I certainly thought about, like, is this going to be the right path for me? Is this something that I want to do? And I think it took a lot of soul searching. I think one of the things that was helpful for me, talking to some of my older mentors, that just said, look, if you kind of go through medical school and you don't second guess or reconsider just because it's that challenging, then you're probably not being honest to yourself. That it's really normal to kind of question, like, is this what you want to do? Because it's so grueling and it's a long path. So for me, it really came back to centering with, similar to Dr. Pierson, just in terms of centering myself on, okay, why am I doing this? Who can I help? And just taking it back to the volunteering and getting more involved with there. I think that's what really pushed me to get unstuck and to make it past the first year.
Wow, and look at that. I'm glad you didn't quit, because now you're the director. Imagine if you had quit.
I know.
Right? So what's your message to the people listening, right? Like, you're not the director, you're like the leader, like the one solving problems in Chicago, Louisiana. And that is so amazing, Dr. Stevens. I'm so,
Yeah, my message would be, and it's so, as Dr. Pearson was saying, I think there are always times, there are like mini stucks, big stucks, those kind of things, and just stepping back and thinking, why you're stuck, sending yourself, why you're doing this, what do you actually want to do? In some ways, sometimes there are more ways than you may think. Like I know, like the struggles with disability insurance as well too, like how weird we don't get taught everything we need to know about those things. So I imagine, Dr. Pearson, you're being very impactful in the work that you're doing now.
I hope so.
Yeah, because we don't really get the training on any of that kind of stuff. Finance is almost like a 4-letter word in medicine. So I think, yeah, the message is being that, like, just step back and thinking, like, why are we doing this? What are you really trying to do? What is what is your North Star? What is that goal? And I think that was, for me, was really helpful with getting through some tough times, even now it is.
wow. Thank you so much. I'm going to have Krystal come. Krystal, you're the clinical, specialist here. So we talked about getting stuck and being unstuck, right? And we've heard 2 stories. We've heard Dr. Stevens share his experience in medical school and how he almost gave up, but we're glad he didn't. We heard Dr. Pierson when she was suicidal because of the injury that prevented her from continuing her career in medicine. Now Dr. Pearson brings in a newer terminologies like the larger stock, or, like the different levels. So can you stratify? Is there something like different levels of being stuck? And also how we can, like, safety proof ourselves from permanently being disabled from being stuck?
Yes, thank you, Azumah. Thank you, Doctor. I'm so touched, and just Dr. Pearson's story, Dr. Stevens' story. So yes, there are different levels of being stuck. You may be stuck because you have lost your job. It may be something that is, or during the pandemic, we forget. We have been in a world of living in a pandemic, and many of us are not used to that for 2 years. And so I would say that's more the personal, that's more the individual. Then you have, the middle level, where it's not just the individual level, it affects other things, your career or your finances or your relationships with others. Then you have the larger level. We forget, with the death of George Floyd and different things in our communities, how an environment, if your environment is very toxic, if it does not have opportunities, whether that is out in rural Kansas or in the urban areas of our United States of America. And so, globally, think about the war in Ukraine. Many of those individuals are going through so much turmoil, so much negativity, that whole environment is probably, they're going through war and they're hearing bombardment. They have to leave their country, have to leave everything, and they don't know where they're going into. You can feel really trapped inside. For me personally, I have multiple sclerosis. I've had MS for right before I went into grad school, and I related to what Dr. Pearson said. I felt like, okay, like what am I going to do? Am I going to die? Because, 20 years ago, I'm 41. There was not a lot of treatment that they have for MS. So I'm like, oh my God, like and so you think about that on a personal level, but then you have to say something in your mind like, I can go on. And I love that of finding faith, because it is so true. You have to give yourself grace. You have to give yourself permission. It's okay to make a mistake. That is not the end of the world. There's so many people that make something very simple or a mistake and they think, oh my God. And we have to give that encouragement. You have to have that cheerleader. You have to surround yourself with positive people. I take that suicide, what Dr. Pierson had said. I have a cousin and she committed suicide last year, and she was female. And I think that, when people say, oh, well, why did she do that? But we don't know what she was going through. She was probably in a level of being stuck in a condition and not really having that support system of people saying, hey, I'm here to listen. And so it is always our job, even as a clinical social worker, to really understand not only the veterans that I serve or the patients, but to listen to my peers. Are they burnt out? Are they tired? Is something going on? Hey, let's kind of talk about this. Let's do something else. So I do think that there are different levels of being stuck, but the goal of it is that you can always become unstuck. And grace is so important. You have to give yourself grace, give others grace, even with the most simplest things. We think, don't worry about it. You know what I mean? This is not the end of the world. It's not a catastrophe, but we have so many things as women, as you guys, as physicians, you have so many things that you can't make an error. Once you put on the white coat, you're like, oh my God, but I have a need too. I'm an individual too. I'm a person. That's what you want to tell, but sometimes people don't. People only look at you by your title or well, they're this, they can't, they're invisible, like you're Superman or Superwoman, but you're individuals, you're human beings. And I think that's one thing that we have to understand. We are all human beings, and all of us can become stuck.
Thank you, Krystal, for that. I truly appreciate it. Krystal, you alluded to a support system. Yeah, and even Dr. Stevens also touched upon the lack of support system when he moved from Louisiana to Chicago. So are there some tips that you can share with us on how to create a support system? Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Doctor. One thing I do think is important is to get outside your comfort zone. Um, when I have people to call me, be like, Krystal, what do I do? And I'm like, have you ever ventured outside? Because one of the things, that support system, if you have a system in your environment that's negative, those are people that you don't want to have. If you have people that are not giving you positive feedback or telling you that you can go forward, you can do things, they are not going to be that supportive towards you. So I would say sometimes if that's your faith community, whether whatever faith you believe in, that could be your faith community. It can be your peer group. Maybe it's somebody who is in a different position, or maybe it's a mentor. I think that something that is never really encouraged as we get adults is to really have a mentor. But I think everyone should have a mentor, because that mentor is that person you can go to in your profession, or maybe not your profession, that you can say, hey, I just need to lay this on you, just to give this, because sometimes we're carrying all this stuff all day. I cannot imagine if I was a medical physician, all of the things that I have to deal with, in addition to your family, in addition to your business, in addition to everything else that you have to do and that you're carrying. And so I do think it's important to surround yourself with mentors, with faith community, with social communities of people that you find positive things, and just go, and you can have that as your cheerleader, as your group of people that you can rely on. So I do think building that up, whoever you find, I have people like, hey, Krystal, you're my cheerleader. And I'm like, hey, I'm here to cheer. I'm here to root you on, because and I would say this, when somebody asks you to be their cheerleader, that's what you should do. You should not come with negativity, because then you're not a cheerleader. You know what I mean? Cheerleader peps you up. So I'm going to pep you up like, hey, you can do this. One of my friends in the Army, I remember when she was going to social work, she wanted to be a social worker. I'm like, you got this. Now she's got her doctorate in social work. You know what I'm saying? And like, and I'm looking at her like, I'm looking at you. You need to mentor me. Because I'm proud of her because she didn't let her environment, having been in the military, having gone through all those different things, and she's like, Krystal, I'm doing something that I love, and I'm like, I'm so proud of you, and pass it forward.
Thank you so much. Dr. Pierson, did your setback make you a better person?
Oh, that's a great question. I'd like to think so. Probably not in the beginning. I was pretty salty and didn't really want to be around anybody. So I would say I definitely went through stages, similar to stages of grief, is kind of the way that I've looked at it. I like to think that I am more empathetic now. I think that I have my own stronger foundation. I think it's made me a better partner, a better mom. I definitely feel like the conversations that I have with my children are a little bit different than maybe they would have been. So yeah, I'd like to think so without being egotistical. I don't know.
All right. Thank you so much for that. Krystal, do you want to chime in as a specialist? Does setback make us a better person? So
I
that,
think
yeah.
it does. I like what Dr. Pearson says, and I don't think it's egotistical because it's who we are. I think we have to realize it is nothing wrong. You know what I mean? When we find qualities of ourselves, because that is loving ourselves. You know, when you feel like if you say, "Hey, I'm beautiful. I wear these," you know, that is positivity. And so it's not in some ways. So I think that setbacks will make you a better person in a lot of aspects because it's something that then you can go and you can tell somebody else you can get through. Because if Dr. Pearson would never had went through that, think of all the physicians' lives that her business is changing, because it was a need and she saw that need from a personal standpoint and now she's here today.
Oh, thank you. But you know what? I do think, Dr. Pierson, that setbacks are like, they do make you a better person, but they don't take away that scar, because there are times, I've been through setbacks, multiple ones, and I feel like I'm a better person. My patients tell me that. They always say, you're such an empathetic physician. I mean, Dr. Stevens, you know me, you worked with me, right? My patients always say that because I'm so empathetic, because I understand. I remember when I was so broke that I used to go to like the kitchen soup to get food. Like I've been through all of those gamuts. So it made me a better person, but I still have scars. And sometimes I visit those scars. Go
Yeah,
ahead.
I don't think they ever go away. I can shut my eyes and put myself right back where I was. I think the challenge is when we find ourselves back there or feeling our scars, not letting them get the best of us. And I think that it's a continuous work, right? I think that this is something that is a lifelong journey and part of our lifelong journey. I had mentioned before that it's not all roses and tulips, right? And so I think that those scars do make us stronger, right? At least I like to think so. It's one of the things that keeps me going. And I also wanted to add one more thing that I forgot to mention is the power of animals, and support people doing things that at the time you may not think is helpful, but kind of trusting the process. My husband brought home a puppy and said, here you go. You have a choice. You can stay in bed and be surrounded by filth, or you can now take care of this puppy the way that I know you know how to take care of things and get out of bed. And at the time, I hated him with every fiber of my body. I was like, how can you do this to me? You know, what did I do to get this? And it was probably the singular best thing that happened, because I started taking her on walks. It got me out of my space, right? Krystal, Miss Kemp, you mentioned get outside, right? Get out of your comfort zone. It forced me to get out. I mean, literally to get out of my house and take care of this puppy who didn't ask to be brought in. And I sometimes credit her for saving my life. And at the time, I didn't see it, but it was one of the most positive things and the most supportive things that he did.
Wow, thank you so much. That was incredible. I do actually agree with you. I do have two dogs, and there was a time during my own stock moment that it was my dog that made me get out. So I agree, and we have so much in common. Dr. Pierson, that's amazing. Dr. Stevens, is getting stuck a part of life? And then we're going to wrap up after you.
Yes, it is. Speaking of stuck, my laptop just died, so that's why I jumped off. With no charger, but so no, Benamor system. No, it is certainly a part of life. I mean, I spoke about medical school, but certainly at each point, I would say there have been times where I've, especially during the pandemic and even before then, where you kind of question, am I currently doing what I should be doing, what I'm supposed to be doing? So I would say it's definitely a part of life, and I think some things are small, like this is not that big of a deal, right? But as things get bigger, right, knowing when to ask for help. So I love how Dr. Pearson, how you highlighted that of knowing when to ask for help, and realize that you can't do this alone, anything alone, and nor should you do things alone. So looking for the right support community.
All right. Thank you, all of you, for being here. Before we move forward, I just want you guys to leave our audience with a take-home point. Like, I want each of us to say something. You can make it a 3-word sentence, just something. So I'm going to start with Dr. Pierson.
I think mine really is just remembering that we are strong and we are capable and we are resilient, and you have to believe in yourself and the rest will follow.
Thank you. The next person is Kemp. Krystal.
Thank you, doctor. I would say allow yourself to have grace. Grace when you do well, grace when you make mistakes. Grace each and every morning. Give yourself grace.
Last but not the least, Dr. Stevens.
Yeah, so don't forget your North Star, whatever that is for you, and don't forget your community.
Wow. And then I'm going to say this. I think a successful person bounces back from negativity. And like you said, it's a continuous process. Like after one stock moment, you win, then there's another. But you know what? Each time you learn something, each time you become stronger. And maybe I would say this, each time a larger stock becomes smaller. All right, so we're going to go back again. Thank you so much for being here. We're going to go back to our slide presentation. All right, so we're going to go to our community announcement. So our next webinar will be May 22nd. And this time we're going to have all men keynote participants. We're going to be talking about men fighting for global menstrual equity. We're going to have special guests from Love Your Menses. If you guys don't know the organization, please search us. But I'm the co-founder and president of Love Your Menses. We're a global organization started in Boston, and our goal is menstrual equity. Menstrual equity means providing menstrual education and empowerment to our young Black and brown girls and women globally, and also providing quality menstrual pads or tampons to those that are menstruating. Thank you. All right. For those of you not aware of this, I am, what's going on with my slides? Sorry. I'm a coach, and here's what a client says, Sarika. There were times where I felt unqualified and confused, I guess stuck about my career paths, but she empowered me and constantly spoke live. Like Krystal says, we should all be cheerleaders. And truth into me, at the end of our conversations, I always left feeling so inspired. I will always be grateful for her mentorship and the things she's done for me. I highly recommend Dr. Azumah, that's me, for life coaching. Her guidance will help you through whatever you may be facing. I don't know if through whatever you're facing, but I could tell you I would help you again. As a friend always says, sometimes being the product of the product makes it easier to help others. All right, here I've written books. So if you guys want to support me and the work I'm doing, check us out on Amazon. Yesterday, a few days ago, I got some royalty checks from the books that I wrote, and I was so grateful. So support me as I support others. Thank you again for your support. Subscribe to our YouTube channel to get more information and more educational, uplifting programs as you have on today. Thank you again to all our speakers. If you have any questions, suggestions, please email me at info@healthyanduplifted.com or healthyanduplifted@gmail.com. Our production and technical team includes Brianna, Etleen, Israel, my amazing intern, Noble, who is in here with us behind the scene, Alpha, Latasha, thank you. Sponsors, Azumah Solution, which is my coaching company, Elevate Her Mind, Healthy and Uplifted, and our amazing nonprofit, Love Your Menses. All right, that's the end. So we're going to end the podcast while those behind the scene can chat. Thank you again.